Join Pete Miller in the Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by the invocation delivered by me.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, you are our protector, provider, and Lord of our lives. In your infinite wisdom and love, you have created mankind in your image, capable of amazing acts of generosity, love, peace, kindness, goodness, and gentleness, each of which is so needed today. As beneficiaries of your grace, we thank you, and we hearken your call to turn to you and humbly accept your benevolence, wisdom, and guidance. Father, we live in challenging times, and only in such times can we know the true metal from which we are cast. Will we snap under the temptation of personal gain, weakly fall under a heavy burden, succumb to a false accusation against us, or even yield to mere ignorance? It is only when we keep our eyes on you that our faith abounds even in difficult times. Father, please strengthen us for times such as these. May we turn to you in our prayers so that we can overcome difficult times and hear your truth as we rely on your strength and not our own. May we turn to you in our prayers to discover that hidden answer that become revealed only upon understanding your truth. May we turn to you in our prayers and become the men and women you call for each of us to be. Father, today we gather across communities to elect area, state, and national leaders. We humbly ask that you bless our community, state, and nation with those who know all power rests in you, that they may submit to your will, and may we be blessed by good and faithful servants. Father, help our nation, state, and local leaders to be the men and women called by you for the difficult times at hand. Please continue your umbrella of protection for the first responders across our community, state, and nation. Please continue to protect the members of our community and prepare us in this moment for future challenges that may come. Finally, we call on you to share with the many public servants here this evening your patience, wisdom, and judgment on each of the items before us this evening. And may our thoughts, words, and deeds be only those that you would have us pursue. Please continue to protect, preserve, and prosper our community, state, and nation. Amen. I want to welcome everybody. There being no citizens to be heard, brings us to item number 4, City Council comments. Lee, Lee's not going to make it here today. I'm sorry, Lee. He always has great joy to share with us. Pete.
Yeah, so we had trunk or treat this past weekend. I just want to thank all those that participated, and it was a great time, and especially for all the city employees that helped make it very successful. So thank you very much. And the other things I wanted to, we are one alderman short today, and I just want to wish him a speedy recovery.
Thank you, Pete. Conrad.
Really good to see everyone. It's mostly empty in here usually, so nice to see everyone, and wish the best for Alderman Powers. He'll be back soon.
Maggie.
Well, I just want to say good evening to everyone and to recognize that the spirit of Chavano Park certainly has been shining yesterday and the several days before that. We had more fun at Trunk or Treat yesterday. Our police department couldn't have had more fun. Our fire department had way too much fun, and our public works people won the grand prize. So you can't say that wasn't a lot of fun, and then all the other people were winners too. So our community and our neighbors around thoroughly enjoyed it, so we're going to do it again next year, I'm sure. Come rain or shine, the shade was nice. Yesterday they put the old ladies in the shade, and we deeply appreciate that. Anyway, I want to thank the folks that are here that have served our community on our various boards and committees and so on. We were here to honor you tonight, but thank you again for your service, and thank you folks for being here.
Buddy,
Welcome, everyone. It's good to see people here, and don't forget to go vote. Thanks.
well, and just to reiterate on what Maggie was saying about all the children, we had probably something over 300 children. I know because I talked to every single one of them, and I'm very proud of them that each one of them knows how to say either Wreckham or Sons Up, Guns Up, Texas Tech. So way to go, children of the community of Chavano Park. Brings us to item number 5, presentations, commentations, and announcements. Without objection, I'm going to pull item number 5.2, proclamation for Whataburger, in hopes that their new general manager will be with us next month. Brings us to item number 5.1, proclamations, National Night Out, Neighborhood Host Proclamation. We are blessed to have several members of our community who shared their hospitality in true Chavano Park style. I was very fortunate to make all but one of the homes, although I did show up at one of them about 10 minutes after everybody had left, and that family was very kind to let me in, even though I am a Red Raider, and they now know that. So Laura, Scott, thank you very much for that. Let me read one of these proclamations to you, and then we will recognize y'all in order. Whereas the City Council of the City of Chavano Park wishes to express appreciation for those who made a difference in the success of the 2024 National Night Out, which took place on Tuesday, October 1st. And whereas it is essential for all citizens of the City of Chavano Park to be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and the impact that their participation can have on reducing crime, drugs, and violence in Chavano Park. And whereas City Council is grateful to those who strive to keep our community's strength and well-being foremost in their hearts regardless of inconvenience. And whereas police community partnerships, neighborhood safety awareness, and cooperation are important themes of the National Night Out program, and whereas the National Night Out would not have been such a great success had it not been for the generous sponsorship of the various activities. And so first, I will recognize Laura and Scott Simon. If y'all would come up to the dais and we can get a picture and I can give you the proclamation. Recognize Scott and Laura because as they were juggling a neighborhood full of people coming and going, they're also juggling 3 small children who were just the nicest people in the entire world when I showed up. And I know that each one of them knows how to say Wreckham. Yeah. Sons up, guns up. Thank you so very much. And now I'd like to call forward Kim Lane. Kim, come on down. Kim is one of those people who used to do community events some time ago and to juggle 3 small children while she entertained a house full of neighbors on many occasions. Kim, thank you so very much on behalf of the City of Chavano Park. Fortunately, I have 1 grandchild up on Kim at this point, but she's got 3 boys, and so that could end very, very quickly. On the final one that we have here this evening is Conrad Kirkendall. Oh, come on down.
Yay, woohoo!
Now, Conrad makes the best brisket in Chavano Park. I hate to, if some of you think that you make better brisket, I hate to tell you that, especially Curtis. He's probably going to turn off the microphone here in a minute and not take our picture. But Conrad is such a good sport about barbecue that when we did an inter-competition between the staff and our city council members, Conrad, thank you so very much, and I did enjoy having you here. Our next recognition is for Fire Prevention Week. About 9-10 years ago, Bill and I started a tradition that had been across Texas and the United States for the generations that preceded the young ones in the room. And that was to do poster contest. And that was all centered around Fire Prevention Week. And the kids at Blackman have embraced that with us for the last 9 years, 10 years. It's a long time, 10 years, I guess, now. And they have had a great time doing that. And that would not be possible without our first responders. This year was the first responder year for the police department. But as it happens, this proclamation goes out for Fire Prevention Week, which was the week of October 6th through the 12th. And so the fire chief actually gets to take the accolades today. Chief, come on down. Chief, we appreciate the OS rating that you have in Chavano Park, a 2, which is among the top 5-7% in the nation, which is pretty remarkable for a small town. It is the gift that keeps on giving to every citizen of Chavano Park, because with that low rating that we have, our fire insurance portion of our homeowners policy gets absolutely crushed as much as it is possible to do. I'm going to give you a chance to say a few words on it. Thank you very much, Steve. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. We were just recently reassessed for our ISO rating, and I'm proud to say that we maintained a level 2 rating. That's very significant for us. Being a small town, that's a big feat, and so it's thanks to all of you, our taxpayers, and the awesome council that supports us. I don't think that we'd be quite successful this year with our theme, which is smoke detectors, make them work for you. I would like to point out Chief Fox for very graciously testing out our system this last month. You'll have to ask him about that, but we do know that if there was a significant fire in our building, our alarm system alerted us and brought the attention that it deserves. So thank you for that, Chief Fox.
And Chief, the council wants to reach out and thank you as well.
And just one more reminder, what we like to remind everybody is the time changes this next weekend. We encourage you to use that as a reminder to change the batteries in your smoke detectors. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, our next recognition is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I have a proclamation here. Whereas breast cancer is the second most commonly diagnosed form of cancer for women in the United States and remains the second leading cause of cancer death among American women. And whereas mammography or X-ray of the breast is recognized as the single most effective method of detecting breast cancer long before physical symptoms can be seen or felt. Early detection and improved treatment are believed to have significantly reduced the number of deaths caused by breast cancer. And whereas researchers, scientists, and numerous nonprofit organizations are dedicated to discovering the cure for breast cancer, during the month of October, we acknowledge the extraordinary commitment and effort invested in this cause. And whereas we recognize that over 2.5 million Americans are breast cancer survivors, that give us hope for a better future. Now, therefore, I, Robert Werner, Mayor of the City of Chavano Park, on behalf of the City Council, wish to express our deepest respect for survivors and those advocating the prevention and for the cure, and in so doing, hereby proclaim October 2024 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Now, today, we are very fortunate to have Jerry Warden with us to speak on behalf of the Breast Cancer Society. Jerry, I'd invite you to say a few words, and then Maggie and I are going to come out, and we're going to take pictures with you and with the other people who are here from your organization and deliver this proclamation to you. Do you have a few words that you'd like to share with us, please?
Thank you. We appreciate this. We've had a very busy month this month, being October. We've served a lot of women, offering them mammograms that can't afford to have a mammogram, that don't have insurance. And we help underserved and uninsured and underinsured. There's a lot of women now that are underinsured, and we kind of run into several of them that can't get a biopsy because their insurance won't pay for a biopsy. And so we finance a lot of those women. We're mainly all volunteers. So we work really hard as volunteers. There's over 42,000 women in the United States that are going to die this year from breast cancer, and that's just way too many women. Over 300,000 are living with breast cancer, and we've just got to stop this disease. Yes, the treatments have gotten better, but there's too many deaths. We don't want to be here anymore. Alamo Breast Cancer doesn't want to be here anymore. We want it to be no more breast cancer in our country. So appreciate recognizing us. Thank you.
Okay. Maggie, you join me? On behalf of the citizens of Chapman Park, it's our further privilege to deliver this proclamation to you in recognition of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Keep up the great work. You're doing a great job out there. There are lots of survivors in this community who would not be here but for the grace that y'all have done. Thank you so very much.
Please remember Alamo Breast Cancer Foundation, if we can help anyone, man or women, to navigate the system, to get assistance that is needed. That's what we're here for too.
Thank you very much. And then finally, the fifth item is presentation recognizing outgoing appointees. We have two members, former members of our Planning and Zoning Commission here this evening. Conrad, Buddy, and I all served on the Planning and Zoning Commission over the years. Buddy and I were chairman for some period of time. And we understand the commitment that it takes and the long hours that it takes to get us from here to there. This evening, the two that we're going to recognize have had long years of service in that process. Process that included developing town plans, that included developing ordinances, that included developing the future of Chavano Park. And Chavano Park is one of those communities that has been fortunate to be looking forward 5 and 10 and 20 years into the future. And it's been the efforts of the Planning and Zoning Commission that have made that all possible. They have been amazing leaders. And this evening, I want to bring forward first Bill Stipek. Bill, would you come on up here and let us give you a proclamation?
Give him enough
plaque.
time, give him enough time to get up here.
Well, I'm going to ask Bill not to explain the story of our last meeting here this evening, but he can do that with you at some appropriate time as opposed to this evening. I think you should tell him. No? It's not on YouTube. But you're a much better. This is a much better, he's a much better storyteller than I am. Bill, thank you very much on behalf of the community. We're very grateful to you and Marcia for all that you've done in our community. Please keep up the great work. Thank you. And Carla, if you would come forward. Carla is our outgoing chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the last several years. Ever since Buddy got on city council, Carla has been steering that ship of state that is so very important to our community. We're extremely grateful for all of your work over the last 4 years. The city is a better city because of your contributions, your dedication, and your service. Thank you very much for, let's get a picture for you. Would you like to say a few words before you leave?
Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. And for those of you who came for proclamations that didn't recognize, please feel free to leave at any point. We have a great meeting ahead of us, but some people enjoy watching paint more than watching government in action.
Most of them don't laugh.
But you guys have to stay. Council members.
Oh,
Brings us to item number 6.6. All matters considered under this item are considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired by any alderman on any item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Do we have a motion to accept and/or approve items 6.1 through 6.7?
so move.
We have a motion from Maggie and a second from Pete. There being no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Item number 7, all matters listed under this item are considered routine by the city council and will only be considered at the request of one or more aldermen. Coincident with each item listed item, discussion will generally occur. Do we have a request to pull any of items 7.1 through 7.6? There being no request, brings us to item number 8, regular agenda items. Item 8.1, discussion action ordinance O 2024-007, amending the Loop 1604 urban corridor sign plan to allow limited digital billboard signage and setting forth terms and conditions relating to signage. This is a final reading. Curtis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as last time this was in front of you was on August 26th, so it's been a couple months. So as for the audience here, anybody watching as well, just to reintroduce you to this topic, what is before you this evening? So this is the final reading, and on October 26th, the first reading was approved. But what this is amendments to the Loop 1604 Urban Sign Corridor Plan. That was established all the way back in 2014. And in this past decade, since that ordinance was established, it controlled the installation of many multi-business pylon signs that you see along Loop 1604 for the businesses here in Chavano Park. These large pylon signs are not normally allowed in our sign code, but the ordinance that's before you that we're amending tonight allowed these large pylon signs in limited locations and sizes and were instrumental in creating a urban corridor as you drive down it with consistent signage in limited locations rather than being an overwhelming mix. So this proposed ordinance allows, now zooming in on this, the construction addition to those existing pylon signs approved, 3 additional locations for digital billboard signs along Loop 1604 frontage. These sites will be on land controlled by the city via lease, which is the next agenda item, and could become assets of great value to the city and businesses along Loop 1604. And we have worked diligently with our legal counsel to protect the city's interests and ensure that these billboards are a success that enhances the value. And I'll just emphasize the section 2451, which states the purpose for the loops, for the urban sign corridors, reads that these corridors are amenities of great assets and assets of great value to the city, its inhabitants, and the economy. And City Council aims to preserve, enhance, perpetuate the value of these roadway corridors and hereby authorize establishment. And we think this ordinance is in the spirit of that purpose. So the background as I went through, this corridor allowed these pylon signs you see today. There's a picture of the one up there, established back in 2014. It's a separate ordinance from our sign code. It allows up to 60-foot tall signs, 680 square foot. These are not the size of signs you typically would see just on a single business lot. And the corridor signs had to meet the city's branding and can only be built in certain locations. So this is the picture up here is the existing Loop 1604 sign corridor back in 2014 with new D locations for where digital billboard signs would be allowed in the existing plan where all these different, you can see the designs for those multi-pylon signs. It would only be allowing those 3 locations and they would be subleased by the city. So running through these locations as we move from east to the west along 1604. Here you can see North Military, Pond Hill, and this is the pond here, the tennis courts, and this would be a site right here as you're heading down here towards North Military along 1604. Location 2, as we continue to move west, we have moved past North Military. We're now over on the Paisanos Parkway here. And
Or
we have,
east, as we move east.
oh yeah, so move east. We are now, thank you, Mayor. We've now hit the Paisanos Parkway and all these businesses here. This is the 22 acres development. It's undeveloped right now. It is a plan to be developed, but this is a very tip corner here that's a proposed location for a digital billboard. And the third site allowed under this proposed ordinance, as we continue to move east, we're now here at Napier Park, the business development here, and it is right at the tip here. These lots are undeveloped. There's a plan to eventually develop all these lots. Some of them are in midst of development, but at the very corner here of the Napier Park development, in the very west or east corner of the city. So all these signs will have to meet, in this ordinance, the signs that will be allowed to have to meet these basic requirements. It's maximum height of 60 feet, maximum sign area of 680 square feet. The LEDs have to have light blocking technology, which I have a video I can show you here in a second. Automatic brightness adjustments for ambient lighting, internal service access, no visible catwalks. They can comply with all our building codes, engineer foundations. On all signs must comply with their ordinances in general. If you give me a second, I can play that. So this is from a company that demonstrates the light blocking technology capability of these signs. And the LEDs have technology where as you transition your angle, it's viewable from the roadway, but as you move towards away from the roadway, the unintended audience, the LED light dims in this transition zone as this company has, until eventually it is completely blank. There is no light at all being emitted from those LED out. And this is just one of the companies that offer, there are many companies we learned going through processing the next gen items. This is just one of them, this Sightline company.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Curtis. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance O 2024-007, amending the Loop 1604 Urban Corridor Sign Plan to allow limited digital billboard signage and setting forth terms and conditions relating to said signage? This would be a final reading. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Buddy. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Maggie. We're now open for discussion. Pete?
So Curtis, a quick question. On this slide where it shows this, the sign plan, all the locations and all the different signs that we have, we've been very diligent about a consistent design. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Along 1604?
Mhm.
Okay, so we, and part of the RFQ, we really focused on being consistent with that design. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and the RFP that was issued to companies, all the companies got to see these designs and we include pictures of the existing signs as well as all of our branding. And so we encourage companies to come up with designs to match that branding. They're a lot more talented than just me and Bill sitting in the office trying to come up with designs.
And how much flexibility are we giving them on that design, on variations to that design?
Well, every company submitted their own separate designs. This is a little bit beyond this agenda item, I will say, but every single company emphasized they'd be willing to work with the city to come to the design that was most preferential. So,
Okay, do we have other, Maggie?
My question is, I know that it said that there's only 3 locations along 1604 that can put up the billboards. Is that really true? Nobody else can put up any billboards within those parameters?
so the way our ordinances are put today, no one can come in with a large sign, outdoor billboard, an existing billboard. These are 700 square foot signs. They're 50 foot tall. Under today, nobody can bring in a permit to have that constructed. We have set up in our ordinances this urban corridor along a major state freeway. These were the type of corridors that billboard businesses are much more interested in. And in there, we have controlled where we have setting up these multiple sites where you can build these large signs. With the idea is that protecting the aesthetics of the city, preventing too much signage becoming a distraction to drivers. It's a safety. And the city is certified by TxDOT to regulate this signage. And so, yes, we control where these billboards would go, and right now it's just 3 locations.
Thank you.
Buddy?
Curtis, I might be a little ahead of myself, but was the RFP written in accordance with the final reading that we're voting on today?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to cover that
Okay, I
when we
wasn't
get to the
sure.
next agenda item.
So I'll just reserve that for later.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Are there any other questions or discussion? There being no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The motion carries 4-0. Item 8.2, discussion action resolution R 2024-019, approving lease and easement agreement with Rogers Chavano Ranch, Unit 1819. Bill?
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and all the citizens. So this second agenda item and the third agenda item is related to the first 8.1, which we just had was the sign plan. So just in context, this next agenda item is a resolution considering the lease and the easement agreements. The next agenda item, we talk about the RFP, the selection of the recommendation of the selection committee, and then you'll vote for that, and we'll get into more detail on that. Just for background information, the city staff and the city attorney, actually 3 or 4 of the city attorneys have been working diligently with the landlord, which is Rogers Chavano Ranch, Unit 1819, represented by Bitterblue. But the Rogers family members have been very decisively engaged in all these terms for a potential lease. So this action deals with approving a lease and an easement agreement. The document is in draft, and final agreement has been signed by the landlord's representative from Bitterblue, Laddie Denton. And it's we don't have a copy of that, but it's awaiting a consideration from City Council. The second agreement would be this access and utility easement agreement. You can go to the next slide. And that's also still in draft, but the terms are largely set. Once a billboard firm is awarded, assuming that you do award a billboard firm to the billboard, the city, the landlord, will work with CPS Energy to finalize the path for the electrical utility and the access easements. Temporary construction will be used to construct the signs until the final access and utility easements are completed. So just think most of these areas are undeveloped, right? And so we're going to have to get access to it, and we have to put electricity to it. But the access may change once the development occurs, and there'll be a final approval there. But the actual construct is set. So the proposed lease, and I think we can go to the next slide here. The proposed lease would grant the city of Chavano Park control over 3 sites along North Loop 1604 West, which Curtis briefed earlier, in order to develop and operate digital billboard signs. Terms of the lease are in the attachment that you had in your packet, and the terms of the easement and access agreements are also in your packet in the attachments. A billboard firm, if awarded in item 8-3, would enter into the negotiations with the city on a sublease to develop and operate the billboard signs at the 3 leased sites. So I'm not going to go over in great detail the lease, but I can tell you that we've been working diligently with a draft for almost a year, not quite a year, but we've had many revisions associated. Obviously, it's very complex. You can imagine that both sides are trying to protect their interest. We're trying to look at the long term for how this goes forward, and we have, through many iterations, reached an agreement with that. And like I told you, it's been signed, but the big terms are, we have an initial term for a lease of 25 years. Every subsequent years, it extends 25 years. So there's always a 25-year lease moving forward up until 99 years, okay? And not to get too far ahead of me, but that's different than the sublease we'll have with the sign company, which will be a 25-year lease, extendable by 25-year leapfrogs. The terms of the lease include a monthly net rent payment to the landlord of 50% of all revenues minus deductions. Okay, so we're essentially going to split the revenues 50-50. We have terms, and I didn't go into great detail, but they're very specific. If the subtenant rents cease, then the rent payments to the landlord cease, and there's a period of time to get a new subtenant and some other things. The permitted use for the land is only for outdoor advertising structures. The landlord may not sell, transfer, or convey the land without the city's right of first refusal. And there's a process for negotiations if the landlord sells the land that's included in the lease agreement. There's provisions for the landlord's protection in case the city defaults an agreement and fails to pay the net rent, 30 days of written notice. Can't imagine that would happen, but you know, in their interest, that's covered. As the leaser, the city's responsible for the insurance and taxes, which we are going to pass to the subtenant, and that's all in the agreement that went out in the RFP. And of course, the city indemnifies the landlord. So those are the basic terms. If you've looked over the details of the lease, you got any questions of that, I can try to answer that, and I'll just pause from there. Yeah.
Okay. Bill, we have a proposed form of motion concerning the resolution. I'm assuming that should include authorization for the mayor to execute the lease agreement.
Yeah, in this case, the mayor will sign the agreement for the lease agreement.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution R 2024-019, approving lease agreements with Rogers Ranch, Chavano Ranch, Unit 1819, to authorize the mayor to execute the lease agreement and authorize the city manager to negotiate and enter into with consultation with the city attorney, any final access and utility easement agreements. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Conrad.
Second.
We have a second from Maggie. We're now open for discussion. Okay. There being no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The motion carries 4-0. Item 8.3. Discussion action consideration to select a firm in the city of Chavano Park's request for proposals for the use of city-controlled real property to develop, construct, operate, and maintain digital billboards, and authorize, negotiate a sublease, possible executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551072, deliberations related to real property, and Texas Government Code Section 551071, consultation with attorney. Bill?
I have a recommendation, Mayor, that we would enter into the executive session pursuant to the codes authorizing us to do that, and then I would be able to discuss certain provisions of the proposals, talk to the attorney, and then we can come back and open discussion, have further discussion, and then a vote.
Okay. City manager has requested that we retire into executive session. Do we have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to go to executive session.
Conrad has made a motion
Second.
to go into executive session. Pete has seconded the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Maggie, are you voting yea or nay? Oh, it was yea. Okay, I didn't hear. Okay, it is now 7:13, and we are going into executive session. We will return after we come back from executive session. We're returning from executive session held pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551072, deliberations regarding real estate, and Texas Government Code Section 551071, consultation with attorney. No votes were taken, no decisions were made. Bill?
Mayor and City Council, and anyone that may be interested in that. Just to remind you on the timeline, the city issued a request for proposal for the use of city-controlled real property to develop, construct, operate, and maintain digital billboards. We released that on August 9th. And then paper notices in compliance with state law were accomplished on August 14th and August 21st. A pre-bid meeting was held on August 21st. One firm was in attendance. That was Clear Channel. It was done here at City Hall. Questions were received by several firms by August 23rd, and the city issued an addendum to the RFP on August 30th. And in this addendum, at the request of an interested party, the city extended the RFP submittal deadline from September 9th to September 13th. On September 13th, before the 12 noon deadline, the city received 4 bids from firms in alphabetical order. They were Clear Channel Outdoor, Kinjo Outdoor Advertising, Lamar Advertising, and Outfront Media. An RFP selection committee composed of the city manager, the assistant city manager, the finance director was formed, and interviews were held with all 4 companies between September 23rd and October 2nd. I want to emphasize that the committee independently scored each proposal using 5 criteria: firm qualifications, firm experience, design and aesthetics, business plan, and then there was a go, no-go, yes, no on does the signed proposal meet technical requirements. So the drum roll, the bottom line is this: the city staff collection committee recommends Lamar Advertising Company, which scored the highest on the scoring matrix of 94 to 100. Next slide. So you can kind of see that there was a yes, no on the technical specifications, but the four scoring criteria for firm qualifications, firm experience, design, aesthetics, and business plan, and that's how that was ratcheted out. I'm going to go through each one of these four and just show you a separate slide to show you where each one of these companies fit, and there may or may not be some notes. I'm not going to talk terribly detailed about it. If you have any questions at the end, we can do that, but I do want to provide that so that you have an understanding that we did this with due diligently and very, very detailed. We took about a month and a half to do this. It wasn't, we got the thing, what looks the best and how do we do this? We looked at all aspects of that and then went from there. Next slide. We looked at firm qualifications, and so, all these firms have a lot of experience, and qualifications are important, and you can kind of see these are some of the things that we looked at. Firm qualifications includes qualifications in construction and operations and maintenance of the digital billboards, but also includes, their financial position and how they're oriented. And again, we looked at how do they operate now, how do they maintain, what's the greatest future stability, and the two that came out front to us were Lamar and Outfront, or came to the front were Lamar and Outfront. And you can kind of see that we have three very large companies and a very small company. Even taking a look at the number of signs globally, Kinjo, which it looks like it's a great firm, we love to do work with them. They have 50 signs. Now that in itself didn't disqualify them at all, because you're going to look at the other factors and say, okay, how did they come across there? But I'll just leave it at that. You can look at the two highest scoring firms. Lamar has almost 400,000 signs. Outfront has 500. They certainly have a lot of experience in building, maintaining them, and operating them. Any questions on that slide? Next slide. We look at firm experience. Again, there's the number of signs globally, followed by how many signs in the San Antonio Bear Med area. And you can look Lamar and Outfront. They got a few, not as many as Clear Channel, who has about 40. And Kinjo has 2. Kinjos are in Castle Hills, and you take a look at Clear Channel. They've got a number of signs in little municipalities similar to Chavano Park. Lamar's got signs working with Universal City and Converse. I did get a letter of recommendation from the city manager of Universal City, who I know very well. But you can take a look at the spread there. You take a look, they're all very experienced. That in itself probably isn't going to make the difference in what was finally selected. Go to the next slide. Design and aesthetics. Every one of the sign companies said they'd work with us on the final design. The subcontract requires them to submit the design standards for approval prior to proceeding forward. But we got a lot of interesting design standards. The ones shown on the map are not, on the brief, are not necessarily the ones we like the best. They're just showing examples. I mean, in this case, frankly, Kinjo scored the highest. They gave us 8 or 9 options for doing it. That was one of them that we thought was unusual, not necessarily the one that we want, but Clear Channel scored very high. Outfront had score. Lamar actually scored the lowest, so we liked the emblem underneath it, but think we have some work to do on that. So any questions on design and aesthetics? Next slide. We evaluated the potential revenue sharing in a lot of different ways. This is just one slide, and it really takes the projected revenues that were split 50-50 with the landlord, and it projects the net present value. And the net present value isn't necessarily based upon inflation. It's based upon a borrowing equity rate the city has to fall in accounting terms. And then what it really does is it brings down all future values to the present value. It tries to create a level playing ground. And what we did was we looked at Clear Channel because we know exactly what that's going to be. We have a guaranteed annual minimum. And I will just tell you that Clear Channel provided only a minimum annual guarantee amount for each one of their bids, which I've gone over the terms with you, and I'm not going to go over those specifically here. Kinjo provided a minimum annual guaranteed and a revenue sharing. Their revenue sharing amount of all projected revenues was 20%. And so when you looked at the net present value compared to Clear Channel, the Kinjo, while they have a very potentially high rate, looking at the amount of what we projected revenues to be, both those net present values fall below Clear Channel. When you go to Lamar, they talk about net. They've talked to us in detail about how they advertise, what their business plan is, and how that's projected. What's really attractive to this is that the earnings potential greatly exceed Clear Channel, but the actual risk associated with the minimum annual guaranteed is much lower than Outfront and or Kinjo. So we like the potential revenue upswing as well as the revenue, the risk reduction of the minimum annual guarantee. When we looked at Outfront, they actually provided us actual revenue numbers. So this isn't us trying to project numbers associated with it. This is them telling us what it cost and how many signs they were going to do, the cost, et cetera, and they provided us that. What made us significantly uncomfortable is the minimum annual guarantee and the delta between that, and it's kind of hard to evaluate this. This was not like comparing apples to apples to apples to apples. To a degree, it was apples to oranges to mandarins and maybe even a green apple versus a red apple. But we tried to use this chart as well as some other ones to try to come to a common basis. And so that's where you get the percentage that we got in terms of the business plan. And Lamar scored the highest associated with that. Kinjo provided us very little information, just so you know. So we may have it wrong, but they were very protective of their information. They're a private firm. We actually used Outfront's higher sales projection and applied the 20%, and you can see how low that went. Any questions of that slide? Do I have another slide? I think I do. Okay. So we talked about the lease terms. The sublease terms is an initial term of 25 years, which could be renewed or it could be recompeted. The rent begins after each sign is complete. So again, we will negotiate with the sign company that says, okay, you got one sign completed here, he's starting to get revenue. There's a down payment for that one. There's an initial down payment, and then that sign would start. But I don't know that all three signs will start exactly the same time, because essentially you got three different problems of how to get electricity and get access to build it. We'll work with that company to work through that. In the subcontract, we require that the gross revenue be certified by an individual CPA firm, so that someone's looking at that. A third party is reporting back on that, so that we can feel like we're getting fair and equitable revenue shares. The design and construction, the subtenant, the sign company that you all select, will submit design and construction plans for approval. There's a permitting process. Prior to we get to that, we'll get to the aesthetics, and we'll make sure we come to common agreement. The city may terminate the sublease if improvements are not completed in 18 months. The subtenant is to maintain the grounds, the signs, all in good repair and condition. Of course, it's to their benefit to maintain a good-looking sign and keep it in repair. It's to the city's benefit that they do that. That shouldn't be a difficult situation, especially with electronic signs. All the companies had plans to look at these, have periodic maintenance plans, maybe even upgrade them as they go, because it'll be to their business utility benefit for that. The subtenant's responsible for utilities, insurance, any taxes associated with that. The contract, frankly, is meant to be mostly a turnkey. Once we turn it over, they operate everything, and that expenses are adhered by them, and we'll get the revenue sharing associated with that. The subcontract establishes acts of default and provides remedies so that there's, we're going to work together with this subtenant. It provides for the easements, which will be finalized, and, that each one of the companies that bid on this was provided the draft agreement. I mentioned to you in the previous executive session that Lamar had a couple questions. They wanted to make sure that they were protected in case the land got taken by TxDOT. And if someone were to build a building in front of them, they would want an exit clause from the lease. We will work with them to amend that language and make sure it's gone, or that it's included. And I think that's my last slide. Is that right, Curtis? Okay.
Thank
So
you,
that
Bill.
concludes my review.
Okay, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the city manager, with consultation from our city attorney, to enter into a sublease negotiations with Lamar Outdoor Advertising. And only if Lamar and the city cannot come to terms, follow on with Outfront Media to develop, construct, operate, and maintain 3 digital billboards on 3 city-controlled sites along Loop 1604 frontage. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
Conrad has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
We have a second from Buddy. We're now open for discussion. Buddy?
Bill, I have a question as far as the aesthetics involved in the construction of signs. I saw where Lamar did, was the lowest scoring. I know it was just a matter of a couple of points. Do you think they're willing to sit down and work with y'all to make sure the aesthetics are compatible with the signs that we currently have throughout Chavano Park?
Yeah, so, the basic sign face is probably going to be the standard sign face. You take a look at the Roadrunner there, I think there was a fair description underneath there. That was kind of similar to a couple of other ones. If they were king for the day, all 4 firms would just have a single big cylinder pole that went up there and supported it. A couple of the other firms submitted double pole designs. I can't remember the exact language discussion we had with Lamar. I know what Lamar said, that they would work with us on that, and they were amenable to that. We did talk to them specifically. It looks like, just looking at the slide illustration that they put in there, it looks like they took the cylinder pole, put some sort of concrete facade on there, and it's colored similar to what we would have in our limestone, but we did talk to them about making all of that or portion of it limestone, or maybe looking at a design similar to the second sign there from out front, where you have those corridor signs. We already have corridor signs that have a limestone base with poles extending up. And so we'll have to work with that. They were amenable to that. We'll have to not put them on the spot here now, but we will work with that starting tomorrow, if that's who you choose to go forward. And part of it has to do with the engineering requirements of supporting a sign. And so they'll have to inform us on that, and whether or not the second sign can assist in doing that, or whether or not that's just aesthetics. Like, so one company said that we're going to use 2 signs, 2 poles, and that'll be the support mechanism. One company said we're going to use 1, and the second one will just be aesthetics. So that'll be something that if you choose Lamar, they'll have to work through. We'll give them a chance to work through.
Okay, just one other question. I know that y'all spent a lot of time and effort in reviewing the financials and everything else. As far as sustainability and stability, y'all pretty confident on proceeding with your recommendation and backing that up with them?
Absolutely.
Okay. Pete?
Yeah, Bill, just a comment. I'd like to reiterate what Buddy said. I have the same concern. When you look at the image that Chavano is trying to project and all the work that we've done on conformity of signs along the 1604, we put a lot of effort and time into that. And I think that is a critical piece to making sure that the aesthetics of that sign kind of match with what we have. So to me, that's a really key point that we need to make sure. And as you mentioned before, once that design is established, that would be brought forward to city council, is that correct, or no?
I don't know that we've actually drilled down into that to define that that is a action. I certainly can get this. I know generally what you want. I could send it forward. We could then work through if city council says, hey, yeah, no, I want to approve it. I can work with you on that. We're in communications enough to where I will have a feel for whether we need to do that or not. And we may get to an impasse where I present something, you're unhappy with it, you're going to bring it forward, and you're going to say, no, this ain't any good. So, but you may, I don't anticipate a problem.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion from Conrad and a second from Pete to authorize the city manager with consultation from their city attorney to enter into a sublease negotiations with Lamar Outdoor Advertising, and only if Lamar and the city cannot come to terms, followed by Outlook Media as a second alternate to develop, construct, operate, and maintain 3 digital billboards with 3 city-controlled sites along Loop 1604 frontage. Megan, I have a question for you. Is this a contract that is authorized as a real estate contract by the city council on final negotiation? Is this a contract that can be signed by the city manager, or is this a contract that must be signed by the city attorney? I mean, by the mayor, sorry about that. You're not signing anything, Megan.
I guess it's going to depend on the recommendation of council. Certainly, things that involve real estate, lease of property, we recommend it being signed by the presiding officer of the governing body, but that is at your discretion.
Okay, Bill, do you have a recommendation that you're looking for at this time?
I don't have a real problem either way. We bought the lot across the street, I signed it. This is a little bit more of interest. You're planning on signing the lease agreement. I have no problem with you signing the sublease. If you want me to sign it, I'm happy to do it as well.
Okay. I don't know what the preference of council is as far as executing an agreement after Bill completes the negotiation.
Well, I would recommend us keep it consistent with your signature, Mayor, if that's okay.
Okay. Then to include in the motion that the mayor will sign the agreement as finally negotiated by the city attorney and the city manager. Conrad, do you accept that as a modification?
Yes.
Okay, Pete, do you accept that as a modification? So the motion is finally amended is to authorize the city manager with consultation from the city attorney to enter into sublease negotiations with Lamar Outdoor Advertising, and only if Lamar and the city cannot come to terms, followed by Outlook Media as a second alternate to develop, construct, operate, and maintain 3 digital billboards on 3 city-controlled sites along Loop 1604, the agreement to be executed by the mayor. Okay, there being no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The motion carries 4-0. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and being with us today. Item 8.4, discussion action, Phase 1 Street Reconstruction Project, cost increase update, and further phases way ahead. Proposed increase in funding of Phase 1 project. Chris and Curtis. Chris.
Good evening, council. Give an update on the project. As of last Monday, all pavement has been put down, so the project is substantially complete. D&D is still going to be out there doing final cleanup, and then we will do punch walks here in the next couple of weeks, but the project is substantially complete at this point. In the completion of the project, it was identified that on the bid form, the quantities for sheets 131 through 141 were not included in the summary. Sheets 131 through 141 include Cliffside to Northwest Military along Cliffside. Within the, sorry, I had a couple of slides that are missing. So the items highlighted in yellow are those items that were on sheets 131 to 141. Within the plan set, the quantities, they were included in the sheet summaries. On every sheet, we provide quantities of what is on that sheet. For these handful of items, there was an Excel error, and the formula did not include those last 10. The items above them went all the way across, the items below them went all the way across, but these couple of items did not summarize and missed 131 through 141 on the sheets. On this table that you're looking at, negative numbers indicate a cost overrun. And so there are other items throughout the project that did overrun, and there are some that underran. So what we did when we identified the issue is we did a preliminary over-under with the contractor. We met with Gerald from D&D, Barry, and then also Leonard, the inspector, and myself, and then Andy Caruth. All got together and went through the quantities in preliminary nature and to determine what was over, what was under, where did we think everything stood. And so topsoil overran about $19,000. They had to use additional topsoil on the job. The construction exit, they only had one, I believe, construction exit. And we had included several others that they didn't end up needing. And so there was a small savings on construction exit, installation and removal, curb inlet protection. There was an underrun. I'll skip through the small numbers, go to the bigger ones. The Portland cement concrete driveways overran by $109,000. And I do want to reiterate, these are preliminary numbers. We've gone through it, and we're going to go through it again in finer detail, because I do believe that the concrete driveways at $109,000, I do believe that number's a little high. Aggregate driveways, same thing, that was $41,000. Special driveways at $20,000. I think in general, the driveways are a little high. The prime coat is one of the items where those 10 sheets were missing. They didn't end up using prime coat on the project. It wasn't needed the way that they did their means and methods, and so there was a $41,000 savings on that item. The tack coat did overrun a little bit, but the big numbers are the 4.5 inches of HMAC type B and 3 inches of HMAC type D. Those ran over $213,000 and $274,000 respectively. And then concrete pavement overran $31,000. On a lot of these items, driveways in particular, we knew there were going to be overruns because during construction, we had to extend driveway limits for various reasons. If what was shown on plans, got within 2 feet of an existing joint in the driveway, then we extended to that joint so they didn't have two joints within 2 feet of each other. Items like that, if they had cracking in the driveway that was excessive and it was, just another 2 or 3 feet to a joint, then we'd go to that joint to repair the cracking. And this also gets a little difficult to follow because you've got driveways, but then you have driveways again because we had a base bid, added a vault 1, added a vault 2, and so driveways show up in multiple locations, as does everything, quite honestly. And so here again, we see construction exit, it's another $1,500. So in total, when we looked at everything, $593,000 of overrun is what we're looking at right now. I do believe that number is going to change, and I do think it's going to go down, but we need to go through the final quantities. And now that the road or everything's substantially complete, we can do that final over-under and make sure that we've all got it, just right. Y'all have noticed some cracking out there. The most severe cracking is the longitudinal cracking on Windmill and Fawn. We went out there with the geotechnical engineer and the contractor last, I think it was Tuesday, and we dug holes in the street to figure out what was going on. What we found is that the subgrade under the pavement had moisture, but it wasn't quite as moist as it should be. So we dug another hole just outside the curb. Just outside the curb, the ground was bone dry to a depth of about 3 feet. And so what the geotech believes is happening is that as the ground is drying out outside of the pavement, that soil is shrinking, which is causing the curb to pull away, which is causing the cracking within the street. And so we're waiting on final recommendation from the geotech. But the initial recommendation is to install a moisture barrier behind the curb. That would be digging a trench, probably 12 inches, 6 inches if D&D can find a 6-inch bucket. But about 12-inch wide trench immediately adjacent to the back of curb to a depth of about 4 feet, and then putting in a plastic liner against the curb to keep that moisture underneath the pavement section, and then backfilling that with flowable fill, which is basically concrete without any aggregate in it. Doing that will keep the moisture underneath the pavement and prevent future cracking. To repair the cracking that's already there, the recommendation is to mill out the HMAC that's installed, the type D and the type B, to a 7.5-inch depth, and then rework the new asphalt in there. So we're looking at doing that on Windmill and Fawn, because it's the same situation on both of those. On Chavano Drive and Wagon Trail, the cracking is not near as significant, and Lone Star Paving has said they will repave that at no cost to the city. They acknowledge that it was an issue during construction, and they're going to fix that. And then here's a map showing the limits of cracking. So on Windmill, it'd be from about here all the way to Northwest Military. There's cracking. It jumps from left side to right side as you're going down, but all of that has that shrinkage cracking from the surrounding soil. Same thing on Fawn. On Fawn, it's only about 190 feet that needs to be redone. But then on Wagon Trail and Chavano Drive, it's less severe cracking that they are going to repair. Summarizing the funding status to this point, the missing quantity errors, this is a very rough number. If you took just those quantities and added them up from the sheet summaries, it's 575,000. When you get into the actual quantities and items that weren't used, that number does go down a little bit. Construction overruns, we plugged in 25,000 here just because we calculated 593 and that got us to 600. And then build, that's not my number. I don't know.
So phase 1C there is because that is the Post Oak Way and Cinnamon Oak and Chavano Creek. And that's going to be built with probably a mixture of federal and bond money. It was added into the federal money to soak up any extra and maximize those federal dollars as much as we could. So just plugging in $500,000 dedicated to that project, which we're including in the next gen item and we're putting in the federal grant. You're still left here with, right now, today, we have 3.9 million unspent in the bond monies. And of that, 1.9 million is uncommitted to any contract. Not even this, if we absorb, I've just shown it that you absorb that $575,000 hit unexpected, you're still 1.9 million.
And we talked about using that money for basically the HA5 seal coat of all of Chavano Creek so that they could sustain the, they're 15 years out from doing phase basically 3 or 4. And so we've got to maintain those streets to get them to that 15, 20 years. So that's what we use this funds for.
Okay. Curtis?
Yeah, so this slide I have up here in front of you, Mayor and Council, this was shown to you back in February. This was Freeland Turk. They did an assessment of looking at Chavano Creek, which again is the last subdivision that we would reach in our master sort of street maintenance plan. Is there something that we could do to maximize those bond dollars where we could do an application to extend the life of those streets? So when you look at the 1.9 million, and they've already looked, this was into council as a potential option to maximize that cost estimate to do that, HA5 along all the streets, mill and overlay, some of the worst hit areas, the areas in gray there, that's the federal project here. And in fact, we've included that portion in the federal project too. But again, to try to soak up as much of the federal dollars as could. But all the rest of Chavano Creek, doing it throughout the entire subdivision, is $1 million. So we're still within reach of being able to do that still with the bond money, if the council so chose.
And then, Chris, do we have any ballpark figure of what the restoration cost is going to be on Windmill and that section of Fond? Because that's pretty extensive work, going down 4 feet, putting a barrier curve and filling it.
We don't have estimates on that yet because Terracon hasn't given us a final recommendation. What we talked about in the field was going down 4 feet, and at the time, a 1 foot bucket was the smallest that D&D thought they had. And so, but we're still waiting on Terracon to give us a final recommendation on that.
Okay. Bill, do you all have anything else?
Well, no, in terms of what we require, because we approved a contract and we have been doing pay apps, and I don't know what number of pay apps we have here. We currently have 2 outstanding pay apps that will take us probably to the 98% fully funded amount. There may be something, Gerald, that's later on. But we have a pay app application for our September and October pending. So my understanding is that the draft pay app that's been submitted hasn't been finalized because Chris was talking about going ebbs and flows with that. But we're $40,000 short for that pay app. And then we would be short for the remainder of balance, which is, about 550,000, 575 for that. And again, those final numbers haven't been finalized. And then we're also going to need funding for the reconstruction of Windmill and that portion of Fawn. And so the purpose of this agenda item was to give you an update, show you where we are. Yeah, we finished for all intents and purposes most of the paving. We got to go back and we got to fix some of it. We've got to do improvements based upon the soil damage, but we have some cost balances we've got to account for. I would remind everybody that the contract we signed with D&D is a quantities-based contract based upon the quantities that they actually used. We estimated the quantities. The actual plans that were done in the RFP were actually accurate. The way they work is, there's an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know who does it, but they add up all the individual quantities of topsoil and gravel and aggregate and concrete and fencing and barriers, and they add all that up, and it comes to a summary sheet. That goes to a tabulation sheet. We went out for RFP. It was all done electronically by a portal. Everyone bid on the same 19 quantities, or maybe it's 25, whatever it was, but we gave them the total quantity that was a result of 141 pages, and then they bid on the price per unit per that quantity, whether it be by linear foot, by cubic feet, etc. So essentially all 9 companies bid on the same total amount. There was an error in the total amount, and so the bids came in lower than the actual cost to construct it. So we're asking for additional funding, not for anything that has not been a service or a material that has been provided. All services and materials have been provided based upon the quotes that were given. And so it would have cost us this amount. regardless of whether or not we had accurately done it in the first place, or whether or not we didn't make this mistake in the second place.
So, Bill, are you saying your quantities were correct then? On the RFP?
Each individual sheet, quantities were correct.
Okay.
And it's done by Excel spreadsheet.
So there's no discrepancies in the quantities?
In the individual sheets. And then you have a summary sheet that takes an Excel spreadsheet, and it adds all the quantities from 141 sheets and puts it together to a summarized document, as I understand it. And that there were 10 pages in which some of the quantities, not all of them, some of the quantities were omitted in those 10 pages in the overall equation. So the numbers that the contractors were asked to bid on are lower than what was actually required to do the job based upon the engineering plans.
Okay, so theoretically, if the spreadsheet would have been done correctly, there wouldn't be a 7 to 8% variance, is what you're saying right now. It would be basically true.
So I don't
You're
understand.
costing, you're costing,
7
right?
to 8.
Yeah,
Not
7 to
78,
8%.
7 to 8.
Yeah,
7
7 to 8% variance is what you're asking for, $600,000. I mean, if we're spending 6.8 million, it basically represents about 7 to 8%. And if the cost, so those actually aren't cost overruns, they're just a deletion, or the accounting wasn't done for section 131 or 14 through 140 that you had in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, so the items that were highlighted in yellow, can you go, thank you. Those items, it was a simple mathematical error. The formula in Excel on the summary did not include, those 10 sheets, 11 sheets. We still would have had overs and unders, which is represented by everything in white. But
Sure, but then it's plus or minus to a small
small,
deviation in the number. This deviation seems much greater than normally would be accepted. Am I right?
yes,
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
So I'd like to make a motion to approve funds in the amount of $650,000 for Phase 1 and 2, or Phase 1A, street construction project, and to establish a committee of 2 aldermen to investigate the error and determine if the city has incurred any damages.
okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Did you have a recommendation on who the alderman would be for the group?
I'd like to nominate Buddy and myself to do that.
Okay, so that would be a part of your motion.
That'd be a part of, okay.
Okay, Buddy, are you going to?
Accept.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now we're open for discussion.
And let me just explain a little bit kind of about the motion and kind of some of the thinking behind that. Chris, I think this is a complicated issue, and one of the things I'm always a proponent of is due diligence, is really to look into the facts, kind of understand the situation, and really do dive into it a little deeper. And I think that's more than we can do here at council tonight, because we'd probably be here for a while. So that's the reason for the recommendation. The other thing I'd like to mention too is I think D&D has done an outstanding job, and I'm very pleased with the construction and the way that they've handled the project and the timing. And one of the things I don't think is fair is to hold payment on D&D. So what you're telling me, Bill, is it's important that we approve this amount so you can do the payment structure on a timely basis. Is that correct?
If that's correct. I'm confident that the payments that will be made fairly based upon the services and the materials used. And I would remind everyone that we have a third-party street inspector we hired from Pape Dawson, an engineering firm, that is on site every day verifying quantities and that the services are done. And they're also a very large amount of the quality control. The question remains of how it happened and was there any damage. That's kind of a separate issue in which we should do due diligence, but at the same time, we should recognize that, we're not giving them something for something they haven't done. I've had a conversation with the street inspector that the services provided in the material, this is valid. Now, we're working through the final numbers here. But I'm confident that this total number, even what we're asking, is in the ballpark of what would be expected. And if we hadn't have made the error, it would have been what the original bid would have been. Close. There's still some concerns, and I understand that. We'll get to it.
But this is a lot of money. I mean, it's 10% of our budget. And I think we owe it to the citizens of Chavano Park to do our due diligence and look into it.
We're happy to help you work through that.
Okay. Conrad?
Just real quick, you said it was a math error. Is this really a formula error, or were these sheets linked up, all these individual sheets, 140, whatever, linked up to one spreadsheet, and it didn't pull that number? So was it a programming error or a math error, I guess?
It was a formula error within Excel.
Okay.
And so there's one Excel spreadsheet with numerous tabs,
And it's linked to
and
that.
things are linked together. It's stupid complicated for an Excel
So
spreadsheet,
it didn't have an exclamation point in
And-
there that links it back to the, yeah.
more or
Okay.
less, yes.
So kind of a software error, possibly. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. There is no further discussion or questions. We have a motion on the floor to approve funding of an additional amount an additional sum of $650,000 for Phase 1 street construction with to include an investigation by a subcommittee of council consisting of Pete and Buddy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you, Chris. I think you're still up here. Discussion action Phase 1B and Phase 1C street and drainage federally funded project update and proposed task order to engineer parking plans along De Zavala and Post Oak Way, Cinnamon Oak Street reconstruction. Curtis, are you going to talk first?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So today, the environmental review was officially submitted to HUD. Colliers, the engineer, signed with it. Michael Ferris, he's been great helping me out with that. That is 100% is submitted to the HUD. That pushed back some of the deadline that we've shown you in the past, but this is an updated deadline. The biggest thing for the public to know is that, and we're going to release this more openly to the public tomorrow, but that a town hall will be held here at City Hall on Tuesday, November 12th. It's Tuesday after the election at 6 o'clock. Colliers will be here. Public Works Director, Bill, just like we did with the bond project and the town halls we did with that, because those are so successful, we want to kind of replicate that and let the public be able to see the plan sets, talk to the engineers, get a presentation, everything that's going to be coming with that project Days of All. It's going to be a major change to the roadway. We hope to, after coming out of that meeting by the end of November, before the holiday, we have 100% construction plan set. Unlike with the bond project, we have this federal environmental review. We got to get the green light from the feds. We're hoping we can lock that in by January. And so that then we can release the bid in late January, have it in front of you in City Council by late February. We get to select a contractor. Then we can have that same, just like with the bond project, where D&D was there and they got to meet the residents and hear directly from the contractor what was coming and where to get information updates. Same thing, we have the contractor meet with the residents, and then we could start hopefully construction late spring, early summer 2025. And just to confirm, this I was saying with Phase 1C, that's what we're kind of calling this stuff in Chavano Creek. This was what included in that environmental review is included in all the funding and everything is to accomplish this, which is reconstruction 9,500 linear feet, Post Oak Way, Cinnamon Oak Way. They're the worst condition roads in Chavano Creek coming off from Huebner and Loch Elsama there. And they would be reconstructed, replace at full depth reconstruction existing curbs. It's about 1.3 million. We're projecting right now that we could have about $1 million left over in federal money, so we're trying to absorb and use that as federal dollars best we can. Everything else City Council has authorized with the project, the parking on the north side along De Zavala, improving that, actually making it parking, the overflow parking area to be redone partially by the contractor as they use it as staging area. They would build it for us. That is all included in the environmental review. And in front of you tonight is an additional service request, ASR. I think it's $44,000. I can go look. I think it's $44,000 to bring us up to engineering to 100% with those additional items that have been approved. So this Phase 1C that was done by Freeland Turk originally, this will bring it into the full bid, the construction plan set that would be bidded out under with Colliers. Also, the additional parking overflow, adding that plan into the 100%. That would get us all those additional items that improve to that 100% that we can get, again, before Thanksgiving holiday.
Okay. Curtis, do you have a diagram of your final parking recommendation for behind us? That was part of the comeback that y'all were going to have to us. That was going to be the modification of items 2 and 3 on the parking plan.
We don't have that worked up. This is what this is part of.
That's what this goes to.
This
Okay.
is going to take it to, we conceptually have it, we know what it is, but they're going to take it and they actually have to survey it, do surveys and then do the design. Conceptually, we kind of agreed to which areas we're going to protect, but until they get the survey and they do the engineering, we can't finalize that.
Okay. Very good. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the additional service request number 2 to engineer parking plans along De Zavala, as well as the changes on Post Oak Way, Cinnamon Oak Street reconstruction in the federally funded plan Phase 1B and Phase 1C engineering. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
We have a motion from Conrad. Do we have a
Second.
second? We have a second from Pete. We're now open for discussion. Okay, Chris, you don't have to answer any questions, it sounds like. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Brings us to item 8.6, discussion action ordinance O 2024-011, amending the Chapter 2 Administration, Article 4, Article Boards and Commissions and Agencies to modify Chavano Park Boarding Committee selection process and to provide for an alternate member to the Water Advisory Committee. Pete?
Yeah, so I'll keep this short. This is actually a follow-up from our city council meeting on September the 16th. And one of the things Maggie and I we interviewed the people that applied for a lot of the commissions and the boards. And as we kind of went through that, there was some ahas that we learned as we went through that process. So one was that we should add a member to the water committee. And then another one is that we needed to change the timing on that whole process to allow more time to kind of do our due diligence and do the interviewing. So this proposal actually touches on that. It makes the corrections to the ordinance, and it allows for a new member.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Before we entertain a motion on that, my only observation is that we used to select all of our members immediately after our election process, which kind of jammed everybody up in May. And now we're changing our process to pull this all back into our budget process, which means that we're jamming more work into August. Is September the right time frame to actually do these things instead of in August? That way we're making the selections
Yeah, so that's one of the
at
things.
the October meeting instead of making the selections at the September meeting. Because September just really gets jammed up because Bear County says, I want y'all to have your meeting 10 days a week, 10 days, 2 weeks earlier than you normally would. And now we're trying to make the subcommittee that's helping us with this process and exploring it, all of that suddenly happens faster, and while we're still trying to come up with the budget numbers, which now means that we've added extra responsibilities to certain council members, and I'm not the one doing it, I'm just saying, would it be better if we move that appointment date to October the 1st, that they start their terms on November the 1st instead of October the 1st?
So no, that actually creates another problem because as you move it towards the November timeframe, There's a lot of vacation time. There's people that have Thanksgiving, and then the meetings start getting a problem. Then you start getting into Christmas, and that's one of the things Bill and I discussed. And Bill, I'll turn to you. But so one of the things we did discuss is that actually creates other problems on the other end. So we felt that as you look at the timing of all this, that it was still manageable, even with the things that are going on in September.
Okay.
So is that fair, Bill?
Well, yeah, and you know,
Because it pulls on the city
I'm
resources
not
as
gonna,
well.
I will just say that when we were looking through this, we went to the city secretary and asked her to take a look at this. How would she best do this, based upon the juggling of this? So these recommendations are directly in terms of the timeline from there. I know we had a discussion, the mayor and I had a discussion about whether it'd be better to move it to October, and I passed that, and we had that discussion with Alderman Miller. So there was a very conscious thought process of looking at, well, we thought about asking for applications earlier, giving us extra time so we weren't jammed up in that time period, or extending it. And so that was carefully evaluated. And discussing with the city secretary, discussing with the committee members that actually went through the process, and then weighing that against the budget. The other thing, and I'm just kind of saying this, by the time you get to September, the major budget decisions have been made. And so the intent was to get it to where the process was initiated earlier, and you get the applications, you start a lot of the administrative stuff, so that during that time period, what you're talking about, Mayor, you're really only interviewing candidates, and you're working through that. So in careful consideration, we thought it best to move the application period forward and keep the September, and not try to push everything to where you're trying to reorganize your committees and get everybody together in the late fall.
Okay. Yeah, just a practical observation about this. There is a recruiting process that goes on to find people for these committees. And it takes time to complete the recruiting process for the people, to encourage them to make the applications and to shepherd them into this process. And depending on how smoothly the budget process is working, and right now it has been working very smoothly, that's not that much more work during the time frame that you're talking about. But there have been times where that would be extremely difficult, or where the harvest of new candidates for board positions is going to be a very small crop. And shortening the period to bring those people in means that in May, you really have to almost start that recruiting process. And the whole reason to move this from May back a really long time ago, because I was appointed in May initially, and then eventually I got appointed in October 1. But I don't want to see us at cross purposes for the reasons why we made those decisions on the front end.
I think, Kristen, could you clarify? I think this simply moves the application process up 2 weeks. So it's not like 2 months where you're right. I mean, so from, I mean, the city secretary was distributing the packet to council before on the first Monday of September. Now it goes to the third Monday of August.
Okay, yeah, we used to have people didn't turn in their applications until the 1st of September. And now we're moving their application deadlines how much farther back. You know, the benefit of having those round numbers, like the end of the month or the first of the month, is they're easy to remember. It's
And
like trying to remember
Yes, sir.
the council days. You know, it's the fourth Monday of every month, but if you have 5 Mondays, it's not the last Monday of the month. It gets confusing out there for people, and I'm getting old.
But that's why we have such an outstanding city secretary. It's because she reminds us of those dates, and she keeps track of it, and she runs a tight ship, Mayor.
That's right.
So I
She
don't-
does run a
so-
tight ship.
So I don't think you'll have any problems.
She does run a tight ship. Okay, So at this time, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve ordinance O 2024-011, amending the Chapter 2 Administration, Article 4, Boards and Commissions and Agencies to modify Chavano Park Board and Committee selection process and to provide an alternate member to the Water Advisory Committee. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Pete. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Maggie. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The motion carries 4-0. Brings us to item number 9.
A second.
Maggie is second in the motion, but I need the motion. Who's going to make that motion? Buddy, Buddy,
so
Buddy, you
moved.
going to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Buddy's going to make the motion because Maggie has already seconded it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. We're adjourned.